All right, everyone. This is Ask the Rabbi number 4, Kosher, part 3, marriage and intercourse. Before I begin, I would like to point out that what I'm going to discuss in this and another video that will be B of this A and B series is explicit, is not suitable for young people, children, and the unmarried. And I'll get into that shortly. So if this video, if you're watching this video and you fall under 18 or a young person or what have you, I would strongly suggest that you don't listen to this video. Stop it now and wait until you're older before we have this conversation. So here we go. In this section, I'll slide up a little bit. In this section, we're going to go over 3 things. What is marriage? Fornication, polygamy, and in the next video we'll go over menses, and finally I'll wrap up the series on kosher. Marriage. The idea of the institution of marriage is a new one, and I'll explain. Before the 18th century, and specifically in biblical, and I will have everything over here listed as far as scriptures and so forth. As far as marriage is concerned, biblically speaking, Torah speaking, you are married if you have moved in with a man or a woman into a common household and have had intercourse. The idea of a marriage license and wedding rings and the like developed during the time of Queen Victoria. In fact, Queen Victoria invented the marriage license. There was no such thing before this time, before 1830, I think. And the concept of the marriage license spread all over Europe and finally here in the United States. What we understand as the common law marriage is a biblical marriage. So the understanding of premarital sex, there is no such thing. The moment you move indoors with someone of the opposite sex and you live under one roof with them, independent of the family, of family, and you have laid with them, you are married. Now, a lot of people will say, of course not, we're living together, I didn't take any vows. Well, in Judaism, and particularly for those of you guys who are sola scriptura, there's no place where it says marriage license in the Old or the New Testament. I hate using that term. In the Hebrew scriptures or the Christian scriptures. What is clear is wherever they say, and so-and-so laid with her, and they begot. Well, the laid with her means they got married. So, for all you people who have lived with multiple partners over time, you've been married multiple times. Now, I want to step back for a second and explain that the purpose of marriage, specifically in Judaism, we have in Genesis where the Creator says to Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. Some people will read that and think it's redundant. Well, have kids and have more kids? I don't understand. No, the Hebrew word that's used there for fruitful means joyous, also means to be complete with one another. And multiply is obviously to multiply. So the primary goal here of marriage is not necessarily to have children, but to be complete with one another. The children are an outcropping of that fruitfulness. So when people, especially modern Christians and modern Jews, speak of premarital sex and the harm there is, it is no such thing as premarital sex. There is sex, and that is the marriage. And if you don't believe me, look under all the begats from Genesis to Malachi and draw your own conclusions. Which brings us to fornication. And this is why I put it on this video and right behind marriage. Fornication is a misnomer. It is a term that was developed by actually St. Augustine, who basically also invented the term sodomy, which is a complicated thing. The next video we're going to probably get also into homosexuality. I may touch on it in this video, but we'll see how far we go. I'm watching my clock here. Fornication has nothing to do with premarital sex, as we've discovered, as far as what marriage indicates and how you get married. Fornication has more to do with a euphemism which describes what was going on in the, particularly in the pagan areas. I will use Baal, since I used Baal in the previous video about milk and meat, which kind of draws on that conclusion, which is this. Under Baal worship, one of the other things, besides that horrible thing that they boil their child in its mother's milk, was the understanding and the concept of temple prostitution. With Baal worship, we understand that one of the things that they would do is they would need child sacrifices. So they would gather in women, beautiful women, into the temple, and they would engage in sex in the temple. People who are the practitioners of Baal and Athena with the Greeks and so on into the Roman period would receive power by having sexual intercourse with the courtesans of the followers of, in this case, we're discussing Baal. Through that union, that intercourse, because it was not under a roof of a house and where there was common life, a common family, it was considered prostitution, but it's a special kind of prostitution. Some people would pay for it. Many people would not. Their gift would be their semen. And that semen, if the temple prostitute became pregnant, would produce a child, and that child would be used, either if it was a daughter, would be used for more temple prostitution, or if it was a son, it would be used in sacrificial practices. This is where fornication is the problem. So, in a sense, we're talking more about prostitution than we are talking about having torrid relationships with people at nightclubs. That is fornication. No matter how you slice it, and I've had discussions with primarily evangelicals, and they're like, no, it's premarital sex, and I always argue the fact, show me where it says how we're supposed to get married. Yes, there is the marriage of Canaan, but as more of a celebration. That's usually done in those days by wealthy people, joining union, basically an incorporation or a merger of two families for business propositions. It was not common. The more common way was that a woman would enter a man's house, bring up residence, and produce him children, and that is marriage. Now, the main purpose of the fruitful and multiply part brings us into the discussion, which I will put over here, which is the discussion of homosexuality. Now, before I even get into that, I would like to precursor it by this. As a rabbi, as a person who believes in God, the purpose of your existence is to be a light unto the world, not a judge, jury, and executioner of other people's lifestyles. I have many friends who are gay, who are lesbian and homosexual men. They're good people. I like them as human beings. Their practices are something that I would not be part of. But it does not give you the right, under any circumstances, to judge them. You're not God. I'm not God. What we are supposed to do, and the purpose of us obeying God's laws, is that of being a holy creature. Now, after I've said all that, I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to continue in part B. All right, guys, hold on to your seats.